So, Jarvis, Landry Fields has spoken. He had a pre-draft press conference earlier this week and talked about exactly what the Hawks are going to do, what the Atlanta Hawks are going to do with the first pick. It definitely sounds like they are going to keep the overall pick. That sounds like where Landry Fields and company are moving. But for you, what was your biggest takeaway from that press conference?
That we need to just go ahead and get to the draft. I am so tired of waiting to figure out where this organization is going. I don't understand.
Resulting, resulting is not a. Oh, okay. Continue.
Isn't that the reason? Doesn't that justify our pay? Like, does that justify what you do for a living? Like, what do you mean?
See the person in the middle resulted with her enemy. See, resulting matters, but just saying.
Like, come on. What are we talking about here? Like, one of my biggest accomplishments in my life is being on a video game. Like, come on now. Like, I had to do something. Cool. I had to do something right to get on a video game. So, yeah, man, I'm into resulting, bro. Like, come on. Like, stop with that crap. And he talks about the process and all that stuff. Like, he's real big on that, right? But, man, the process is one thing. The vision is another. I don't know where you're going. Like, he kind of said something. He said one thing that I kind of thought was kind of interesting. It was literally almost right at the end of his press conference. He talked about, how the guys that they bring in for workouts are guys that they really, really like. I know he's saying like, well, they're not that interesting drivers. Well, they haven't brought in Alex Sarr for a workout, right? So, the guy, you guys not really like him? And now I'm hearing reports about Donovan Clingan being a guy that they might potentially look at. I'm just like, man, he's 270 pounds, man. I don't care. I understand the whole Nikola Jokic thing, but yeah, it can't be an extreme, right? Jokic was drafted in the second round. The correction can't be, now we drafting these big boys at number one overall again. No, we're not going back. We're not going back there. That NBA is gone. So yeah, I need for Landry Fields to know where he's going, because it doesn't feel like that. I just don't get that. That's my biggest takeaway. I don't get that he knows exactly where he's going.
Yeah, I think that's a great call, Maria, because I think as much as I joke about resulting, I think most of us were hoping to hear something that sounded a little bit more competitive, that maybe the Hawks' mindset, their vision was moving into a direction of resulting versus developing, because developing just sounds like, hey, we want you as a fan base to wait just another 2, 3, 4 years until we get to the point of resulting. And while getting the number one pick kind of indicates there's going to be a little bit of development and kind of resetting, I'm not sure if that was a good message for the fan base to hear and feel like, oh, okay, we understand the vision, so we're going to be patient with the vision. But what did you take away from that presser?
Yeah, I mean, we've talked so often about how this draft class is not as highly regarded as the last couple of years. So any of the top three that we're talking about, even Donovan, who is a recent, rise within the last week, none of these guys to me would be franchise altering next year. And I think that that's what Landry was saying, and I understand it, but I wish if you were going to talk about that and there was some development, there was a vision behind it, like you guys are talking about. There was a plan in place, like, hey, we are going to develop XYZ for the next couple of years, but don't worry because we have a plan to do this. And there kind of isn't anything when it comes to that. And I don't expect him to come out and give us, he's a general manager, so he's going to say a lot without saying a lot. And he did that very well, clearly. And to me, honestly, the most surprising thing was that he was adamant that the pick is on me. Like, I'm going to make this decision, because it was asked, are you sure it's you? Because we all know that, we talked about it often, it's not just Landry Fields making these decisions. And so I thought that it was fascinating that he was like, yes, it is going to be me. I will have the final say. That was my biggest takeaway from the whole thing, because I just don't think they're going to give us a vision. We haven't heard it. We haven't seen it. They haven't won a playoff series since the Eastern Conference Finals in 2021. So I don't know that there's going to be a clear vision reciprocated or told to the fans. And that's frustrating, obviously.
Yeah. And I think, to your point, that piece that you guys have both talked about is the vision. Like, at least allow the fan base to have some insight. You're right, Maria. We see it, whether it's with Terry Fontenot or Alex Anthopoulos, although Alex Anthopoulos is probably the most transparent. But even
he's
then,
good. He's good.
yeah,
He's good at what he does.
He does say
That's
a
why
lot,
he's.
though.
That's why he can be transparent.
yeah, I'm good with everything I do. But even they play a little bit of chess with us, right?
Sure,
And
sure, yeah.
Terry Fontenot, he'll give us a little bit more. But I think that's the biggest challenge that I took away as well. Was like, okay, so I'm still not sure what the vision is. Okay, is it going to be Sarr? Is it going to be Clingan? Is it going to be Zaccharie Risacher? I don't know. And I'm not sure. And not that he was supposed to tell us which one of those was the pick, but just give us some insight on how you think that person or that player is supposed to be. Like, are you going to go for a Victor Wembanyama, meaning a game changer immediately to the point where he had the Spurs on the cusp of possibly going to the postseason after tanking to get him? Or to your point, is it going to be someone where we're like, oh, wow, okay, this is a developmental player and it's a gamble. And it's also a player that, yeah, while the Donovan Clingan might have won championship, he's kind of not the prototype that you want to go with, even if you hope that he's going to be a Jokic or even a Giannis Antetokounmpo, where you don't pick him high and all of a sudden he goes great. But this guy you pick high and actually you develop him into something great. I want to ask you guys one more that was I'll go with a head scratcher of a takeaway for me. And it was based off of a question that was asked about Trae Young's offseason comments, because some of his comments kind of said, win now, right? On a couple of different podcasts. And so if you're not saying that you're in win now mode, then what does it mean? So Landry Fields' response about being asked about the win now piece, I don't know about that. I think that having number one is a great position for us. It doesn't really change our landscape too much. It's something that's connected to where we're at, but at the same time, with so many things that change in the NBA at large, you really want to look at this pick as an opportunity to, one, find a fit, and then find really high upside guys. So Jarvis, did you glean anything from that marries that philosophy, that thought process to everything we've heard from what Trae has said?
I don't think so, because he did say that I want to win too. I want to win now too, essentially, in so many words. So
he literally said that.
Yeah. So I think that, but how are you going to do it? It goes back to what we've been talking about. Okay, you want to win now. How are you going to do it? So, because I feel like this. I feel like I get a better picture of what the Hawks are going to do from an organizational standpoint and as far as direction and where they're going when the draft comes, right? Because if they get a guy like Zaccharie Risacher, right, that's a wing guy. He's a guy who has some potential defensively, and he's a guy who can create as well. He has that prototype wing size of an NBA player, but he's a project, right? So if they draft him, I'm like, okay, maybe we see more so of a reset. But if they go with a guy like Alex Sarr, who's a guy that I can feel like they can make an impact in year one defensively, all the while working on his offensive side of the court, right? Working on that side. So I feel like that'll be somebody who can partner with Trae, pick and roll, maybe even pick and pop once he starts developing his game. So it's just different things that I feel like can happen. And I feel like I'm not going to be able to see it, obviously, until after draft night. And then we start to get into the whole trade piece in July.
Yeah.
I think I wanted to go back to what you were talking about earlier just for a second. One thing, and it ties into what we're talking about right now. He said that if you would have asked me a week ago, it would have been a little bit more wide open. So what has changed in the last week for you to narrow down your pick? We never really got that answer from his press conference.
Mm-hmm.
They've had 5 weeks to do their homework and they've done a good job, as anybody would. But the win now comments, like, I don't know anyone who doesn't want to win now. So I think it's important to mention that you want to win now, but how? Because you're not winning now with the team that you have right now. I mean, everybody knows that that's true. We've seen that play out over the last couple of years. So everyone that you're talking about, that you're thinking about picking up, and Alex Sarr has fallen off the conversation for some reason. Everyone else that you're discussing, how do they help you win now? Well, he didn't mention that at all. He said, these are guys that help in the future and whatever. It doesn't really change our position now. Okay, so then how do you change your position now? If the number one pick and keeping the number one pick doesn't change your position now and you're so excited about it, what changes? What are you going to do? We don't know. We have no idea. And we've been talking about this for months. We have no idea what a win now Hawks team looks like because there hasn't been any move made to make you believe that they're on that trajectory at all.
The conversation hasn't changed to where we understand what Trae Young brings to the table. So we're going to do everything in our possibility to build around him and be a contender. Haven't had that. Or we're going to go in a different direction and build for the future and draft Reed Shepherd and Trae and DeJounte, or we're going to keep DeJounte. I'm not saying they have to come out and say it, but you got to say who you're going to keep. I feel, at least say who you're going to keep.
Right. Or if exactly my point, like at least if you're not going to address it from the trade perspective, you can talk about it from the perspective of Jalen Johnson, because you could give him a rookie extension. Like, you're eligible to do that right now. Or what happens with, are you negotiating?
Some message, something.
Yeah. Right. Because we want to know. We know that Sadiq is on his way back as far as injury goes, but is he on his way back to the Hawks, or is Sadiq Bey moving on? Be Crazy, Seth Lundy, so many of those guys where we're asking
answer questions for Clint Capella. I mean, we don't know anything.
Yeah, 1 year left on his deal. Can you get something out of him? Can you flip him for something?
About DeAndre Hunter, just anything, like any little breadcrumb that says, oh, wait a minute, they're not going to tip their hands on the draft, but at least they're giving us some insight on what they're building on the rest of this roster that's going to strengthen this roster to give Trae Young or whomever is the leader of the pack the opportunity to get back in the race. Because as we know, whether it was trade deadline, shout out to the New York Knicks, or whether it was off season, shout out to the Boston Celtics for going after Kristaps Porzingis and a Drew Holiday.
The Mavericks too, yeah.
Exactly, everybody else. But even just in the Eastern Conference alone, you're top for it, and it actually paid dividends. So we shall see. I think the verdict is still out, but there's no verdict that's still out about giving out flowers and flowery branch. We are going to talk about that in Around the Metro.